Hey guys, Doc Heath here. Hey, welcome to our weekly 18-minute, and we're going to try to keep it just 18 minutes because Jeff's a busy guy. I got patients coming up, but we try to do this every week, and it's at the intersection of business and psychology. And today we have the master of longevity himself, Jeff Banks. He is a student and a practitioner of all the things that it takes to help you live a longer lived, healthier, more fulfilled life. He is the curator of the Longevity Chronicles, which is a newsletter, but also it's a community on X. So let's get Jeff up here. And Jeff went away. Let me do a few fixes to the camera here. Hey there, Jeff. How are you doing today, my friend? Great to see you.
It's really awesome to be here, Dr. Heath. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, how did you get interested, besides you're getting older like all of us, how did you get interested in longevity?
You know, I am getting older and my kids are young. I'm an older dad for younger kids, and I realized that I needed to come up with a long-term plan for sustaining my health and my earning power, essentially forever. It's an infinite game. What catalyzed me were a couple of podcasts that I heard last year with Dr. Andrew Huberman. One of his guests was Dr. Andy Galpin, who has this marvelous physical fitness system that I quickly adopted. And then he had Dr. Peter Attia on, who really turned me on to, health and longevity and the markers that I should be aware of and some things that I can do to help myself. And then I really started to get in the weeds with it all. And what I've developed since then is my own system for longevity that I've culled from various sources and is really working great for me.
Well, getting started, what were some of your just major longevity obstacles? What kind of got in your way? What are some things you think gets in other people's way?
I think the biggest obstacle that people face is the development of the right habits. And your habits are going to be good or bad, one way or another. And most of us adopt to habits. We have routines that we follow, and the key is finding habits that fit your lifestyle, that promote your health and well-being and the health and well-being of the people around you. So once I started to develop the right physical and mental habits, at that point, that became the table stakes. And I began to really dive deeper and make the tweaks that have led to broad improvement across the board.
Wow, that's amazing. So literally, I guess you'd agree that our habits can be killing us. And what are some of the habits that you find typically are the biggest, longevity hurdles, the habits that are killing most people?
I think the biggest habit that impacts people negatively is comfort, whether it's physical comfort or mental comfort. I think that people resist getting uncomfortable, where getting uncomfortable, whether it's pushing your body past the point of resistance to achieve new metrics of success with your body, or pushing your mind into a place where it is having to learn and adapt to new things that have been barriers or obstacles for you in the past. It's comfort is the bad habit, and the willingness to get uncomfortable and make a habit of that is what extends us.
Gosh, that is so unexpected. I really thought you were going to say, well, smoking and drinking and not getting enough sleep, but that's great. I'm so glad to hear you teach that. I would guess that folks are kind of surprised, and I would understand, and it makes sense that that'd be one of the hardest ones to tackle. How did you start tackling the comfort habit in your life?
So I've got these young kids, and I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do the things that I needed to do to sustain myself while they were around, because they demanded my attention and care, and I want to give my time to them when they're available to me. So I had to start waking up really early to get my exercise in, because I need to sustain myself physically. I had been coming off some hip surgeries and I was in a lot of pain. So I started doing yoga and walking a lot. And, I found that my pain was not nearly as permanent as I thought it was, or that I had been led to believe that it was. And and the other thing is with the eating, you mentioned smoking and drinking and all that stuff. I don't have any of those habits. And for some people, that's like reaching for comfort food, right? So eating, there's a lot of risk of mindlessness and comfort with food. And so what I did was I started journaling all of my food, and I started a practice of intermittent fasting, time restricted eating, some people call it. And that habit really, the combination of these physical habits led me to new physical peaks. And because I've practiced those habits so often, now I know what my ranges of tolerance are. I know when I need to get strict, or if my son wants to bake a batch of brownies with me, I can gobble them up with him guilt free, right? Like when you have the discipline, it actually gives you freedom. And that's what I found.
It really does, and as you're talking, I think one of the saboteurs that I see most often is people hear you and I talking, they hear conversations like this, and then they want to jump off the diving board and just go all out. And so they think that they've got to live some type of Spartan lifestyle where you can't eat brownies, you have to suck on rocks or something, and they just go too far, and then that is unsustainable. So, one thing that comes to mind is sustainability of a lifestyle. So, what do you teach people about choosing habits that make up your lifestyle in a way that's sustainable?
So, what I would say for beginners who are looking to get started on this path is that it's actually a lot easier than you think it is. I started with half an hour of yoga, and you can call it yoga, you can call it stretching, you can call it mobility work. It's essentially body weight exercise that promotes strength and flexibility. Just half an hour a day is really all you need, and lots of walking and lots of habitual movement in my lifestyle, going up and down the stairs, moving boxes around, puttering around the kitchen. I'm in my kitchen now. This is like my cockpit in my life. I'm always cooking. The kids are over there playing, and I'm like managing things, but I'm always kind of moving around and buzzing around. And if you have habitual movement, walking, and a little bit of stretching, that's really all you need physically. And with the food sometimes is a little bit more of a challenge for people. But what I tell beginners is just start journaling, whether it's old school pen and paper or you use an app like MyFitnessPal. I have one called Lose It that I love. These are huge databases that have all your food. Don't worry about changing anything right away. Just track what you're doing and see how that squares. A lot of the pros say things like, what gets measured gets managed. And so when you start looking at your food and looking at how that's impacting you, naturally over time, if it's your desire to change, you'll start small. You'll start measuring tablespoons of creamer in your coffee rather than just free pouring it. And those little things over time add up.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that because in my work I find that, well, I mean, not to quote a former Secretary of Defense, there are things I say this a lot lately, but there are things that we know that we know. There are things that we don't know that we know. There are things that we know that we don't know, but then there's things we don't know that we don't know. And so that creamer, the problem with that is lack of awareness with the food that we put in our mouth. Even I will sit down and I will find, here's something that's just recent for me, is I will put a bite of food in my mouth, and before I finish enjoying that bite of food, I'm already ready to stuff another bite of food in my mouth. And so I've tried to discipline myself for what I might call mindful chewing. Just being mindful of the flavor coming out of that bite of food.
I 100%, Doc, and that's a challenge I deal with every single time. Not just I sit down to eat, but while I'm preparing food. And one of my biggest obstacles is I graze. Like we have a fruit course after dinner every night in my house, and I prepare the fruit for everybody. And I'm like, I take a grape, I take a cherry, take some blueberries, and the next thing I know, I haven't sat down to eat it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling half full right now. And and you and I have talked about this quite a bit. It's the difference between mindfulness and mindlessness, and that's a big deal. Mindfulness is it's a difficult habit to master, and it's a fun one to practice. And I find that the more I practice it, the better I get at it.
One of my favorite exercises that I learned in grad school was what I have come to term the mindful raisin. And so my professor got us all in a group and gave us, passed around a box of raisins. We all took a raisin and we put the raisin in our mouth, and we spent, I think it must have been about 8 minutes eating one raisin, because we really focused in on, before we put it in our mouth, the smell of the raisin, and then we focused in on the feel of the raisin, and then we put it on our tongue and focused in on mindfully the texture of the raisin, and then the shape of the raisin, the size of the raisin, and then finally the aroma of the raisin inside of our mouth, the olfactory experience. And so I think one tip that I would recommend to people is don't just do mindfulness while you're eating. Make eating part of your mindfulness exercise, even with a blueberry, and really experience the full, experience of that single blueberry. And so mindful eating. Well, let's kind of wrapping up here. Let's just quickly go to what I call a 15-second triple shot. So what is your current top mental struggle?
My current top mental struggle is what I call maintaining equanimity. I have a lot of emotional ups and downs, and my goal is to sort of equalize and be consistent.
What's your best mindset hack, your go-to? If you're having trouble, your best go-to mindset hack?
My best mindset hack is I have two. Number one, lean into what's hard. And number two, breathe. I can overcome all my stress or wandering thoughts just with breath work.
Here's a little bit of insight to and I love that, and that's why I'm going to say this, a little bit of insight into behind the scenes of our executive espresso this morning. I had gotten so busy doing a few things, I'd lost a little bit of track of time, and so I was running a bit behind getting on here. I forgot that I hadn't turned the air down on this side of the house, so I'm sitting here, I'm kind of sweating, and I forgot that I forgot my glasses, and then I had to clean my lens off. And then Jeff and I had to do a few things behind the scenes to get him on camera. And that's exactly the thing that I did, Jeff, is I focused on my breathing. One last thing, and then we'll leave the listeners with a parting, positive, healthy affirmation. And I'll breathe while I'm even saying this. You see how that works? If you just breathe, things just do get better. But what do you think that most people get most wrong about longevity?
I think people think that there's one set way that they're supposed to do it, and everyone has their own unique path. And as humans, we can find that path through self-exploration and also through community. So connect with other people who are on the journey.
Yeah, and I hope that you guys got from Jeff the simplicity of longevity. We're not talking about living to be 300 years old. We're talking about simple things, small changes in your lifestyle, one at a time. And I love what Jeff just said, because I often tell people when they ask me, what's the best workout program and what's the best diet? And I'll say the one that you keep on doing. The best program is the one that you'll do and you'll keep on doing. And probably if you're calling it a diet, then that means it's short term. I call it a lifestyle plan or an eating plan. I'm either on my plan or off my plan. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on X. My handle is at Jeff Banks with one F. And if you want to read about my longevity lifestyle and the things that I'm doing to improve along the way, find me at Longevity Chronicles at beehive.com. That link is right in my X bio, and I'd love for you to join me on the journey.
And you know what? I perused some of those articles. Those are really wonderful articles. And so thank you so much for adding to the community by writing those. Hey, what's a parting tip, positive affirmation, or something people can do to get started right away this weekend?
Well, I always say on the weekends, family comes first. I'm blessed to have this beautiful family, and maybe some people are, they're single in their life. Maybe they don't have the same kind of family life that I have, but you do have a community of people around you who value you, who want to see you and be with you and share experiences with you. Whether you're in that time with your family or your community locally, try to be mindful of that interaction. Put your phone down and be present, and you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of it.
Absolutely. There's a magical button on your phone, a setting called the Do Not Disturb setting. We all need to have with our family and with ourselves Do Not Disturb time. Go out and get some Do Not Disturb time this weekend. Thank you for joining us on Executive Espresso. Jeff, you're wonderful. Keep up the great work. All the best to that wonderful family of yours. What a blessing. And we'll see you in the X feed. So thank you guys for joining us. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, Doc.